Greetings, exporters, international businesses, companies, sales and marketing execs, international followers, friends. Welcome all of you to our Go Global webinar series. Today, we're delighted to be talking about strategies for international online marketing. Now, before we, just while we're waiting for the last of you all to register and get yourselves settled in comfortably, we'll go through a few little housekeeping items just before we start. So this is part of our Go Global webinar series. We've been going now for over 4 years. This will be about 45 minutes to 55 minutes long, depending on questions. During the webinar, we'll have 3 little polls for you to answer. We'd love you to get ready with your mouse and answer our polls. We do really encourage and look forward to answering your questions. Just pop them into the chat box and we will get onto them at the end of the webinar. We'll curate them and put them all together. If ever we don't have time, we'll get back to you after the webinar and get back to you with any answers. The webinar is recorded and you will get a copy of the recording into your email box on Friday. So you can sit back and enjoy it and just learn and participate in our webinar. The one thing we would ask you to do, though, is to fill out the survey. They're just 5 little yes and no questions at the end, very quick questions at the end. So when I close the webinar, stay on for a couple of seconds. You'll get a survey popping up and answer the survey. That would be a great help to all of us to answer that survey. So let's introduce ourselves. So my name is Susanna Hardy. I'm Chief Content Officer at IBT Online, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Joelle Lazzarotto, who is our Senior Online Marketing Manager for IBT Online. And Joelle comes with a wealth of experience, not just in marketing, but across all different kinds of markets. And has worked on many companies devising strategies that effectively bring up their brands and their businesses and grow their sales and exports. Joelle is also multilingual, multicultural, multinational, Italian, Swiss, English, all kinds of things. Alex is also with us today. Alex Webb is an online marketing manager for IBT Online, and I've asked him to chip in some of his knowledge and expertise and wealth of experience that he has, particularly about certain platforms. So I'm really pleased and delighted that Alex is joining us as well. Just a very brief word about IBT itself. IBT stands for International Business and Technologies. We've been around for quite a while. We're actually a US company. We have offices though in the UK and a couple of other places, and particularly in Europe and Asia, and we are 100% focused on building websites, managing websites, and online marketing for international companies. So companies that are looking at international markets, that's our expertise. And we are delighted that you could join us all today to talk about online marketing strategies. So we've, together, the 3 of us sort of put together the agenda, and we sort of split things up into 6 different ways of 6 different topics to sort of structure the presentation. And as I said, please do add your questions whenever you feel like. Get into the chat box, and we will get back to you as and when. So let's dive right in and start talking about online international marketing essentials. So this is sort of like the background, the landscape you need just before we start talking about the international scene as well. So really, I think the core that we wanted to just really highlight at just the very beginning is the need for your website. So your website for us acts like a springboard for all of your marketing activities. You have to make sure that you have a good, solid base before you actually start your marketing. And that base has got to be your website. So that's where you're going to be putting things out into the world and bringing them back to someplace where they can find more detail, more, and connect with you in a different way. And that's going to be your website. For exporters, for international companies, that means a local website. And we'll get back to that in a moment. Now, the key to any website that works hard and that works hard to get you more leads and businesses is a website that's looked after. In other words, you need to spend time on it. You need to keep it fresh, updated, animated, and all that. So once you get your international website actually built, you then need to use it. So even if it's well built in the beginning, with good keywords, etc., you still need to use that website and animate it. And that's part of the marketing that we'll be talking about. So here I've listed all these arrows, various parts and types of international online marketing, from paid to organic, social media, but then also endlessly and creating content and refreshing your website, analyzing the results of it, learning from that, and adapting and changing and keeping things fresh. Let's start and drill down a little bit into organic search and really what that means, organic search. So it's the unpaid results is often what it's called. So whenever you type a question into Google or any type of search engine, but particularly Google, since that's the dominant one across the world, the list of the links that appear below the ads, those are organic results. So the traffic that comes from people finding your website along those links and those results is organic search or organic traffic. And these websites that are linked just below the ad section, those are the prize places to be. And they're chosen, ranked, as it were, by Google purely on the basis of their quality and content of the page. In other words, their relevance to the searcher. And again, we're going to come back to this. So that's the key thing to remember here. Organic search, non-paid, and its relevance to the searcher that gets you the top. Now, search engine optimization, or organic and free, is often called, search engine optimization, SEO. So to make sure that your website is well liked by Google. Organic traffic is really considered the most valuable. It's like the prize that you're trying to get, that golden prize that you're trying to get. Google directs the highest amount of traffic, and they're the most trusted source. So Google spends a lot of time making sure that people really think that they, if Google ranks that page, then it's the right page for me. So Google's very, very particular about their rankings. Now the top 5 results for a keyword indicates that the content is very, very high quality. Moving up the rankings is difficult, takes a lot of time and effort. It might be free, but in fact, it takes time and it takes a lot of effort. But it's worth it in the longer term. The results on the first page of Google, that's the top 10 organic search, they get about 90% of all the search traffic. And it drops by, 95% on the second page. So you really want to be on the first page, but it takes time. It might be free, in other words, you didn't pay to get there, but you worked very hard to get there. And it's continuous work as well. So I've listed some of the things that it takes to make sure that you are ranking well. Blogs, for example, content that's there, continuously optimizing keywords, all kinds of things that you have to do for this sort of holy grail of to be on the top search ranking for the search engines. So I'm going to drill down now into this whole concept of relevance and relevance to the to the searcher. And this is sort of a question we get regularly from companies. If I want to do online marketing, why can't I just use my domestic website? I've got this website at home. Why can't I use it? And the answer is quite simple. It's called localization. And it's the way search engines work. I've told you that they rank things according to the quality and the relevance. Well, if you are targeting a Japanese prospective buyer, your US website is not relevant to that Japanese buyer, because the Japanese buyer wants to find it in Japanese, and he wants to have Japanese testimonials and all kinds of things that adapt and that make sure that he has a Japanese relevant website when he goes on to Google. So, the Google itself is localized, so your website has to be localized. You have to actually have the right tool, the right sort of springboard for your international marketing to bounce back onto. Now, we've done a lot of assets about website localization, social media optimization, localization, so I'm not going to go into that in detail, but just as a reminder, here on one page is sort of the key characteristics, criteria that we have for a localization, for social media and website localization. As you can see, local language is 1 out of 10 criteria. Okay, so that's localization is quite a big chunk aspect. So, but it's the key that I really wanted to emphasize is just that you need to have these localized websites in order for your online marketing to be relevant in those markets. So we talked about organic. Let's talk now about paid. Paid is really basically when companies pay to appear at the top of the search results. Interesting, you know, they appear above the ones that have earned their right organically. So I've used an example here of used cars in Bristol in the UK, and you know, so you know, there's some that Toyota Bristol has actually earned its place on that top page, but they're superseded by the ads and those little yellow boxes. The little yellow boxes don't seem to annoy too many people. They still seem to be effective. You know, people still click on them. So you know, paid really comes in useful when you don't, when you're not really willing to wait patiently for your search engine optimization to build up. To give you an idea, though, of how important it is, I mean, I was looking at Google's turnover. Google gets, Google AdWords accounts for roughly 70% of Google's revenue. So despite the fact that they own YouTube and Android and all kinds of other things, 70% is from Google AdWords pay-per-click. Now, the most important aspect of paid and search engine marketing, as it's called, or paid, is just like SEO, is keywords. So when you run SEM campaigns, you choose the keywords that determine which ads show up on the searches. So really, you know, in-depth keyword research is absolutely vital to running successful search engine marketing campaigns. So you'll really want to make sure that your campaigns target the exact terms. Otherwise, you're going to miss the audience. Or if you get it wrong, you're still going to have to pay when someone clicks on it, and it's the wrong term. So you know, you want to shoot for words that have high volume, low competition, but are absolutely laser focused on your business. In terms of overall strategy, the kinds that we like, combining organic and paid is increasingly seen as the way to go, and it's really, you know, having both together is great. Traditionally, marketing people weren't really into what they call outbound, which is, you know, the paid part of marketing. But realistically, these days, people realize that it takes, you know, 3 to 6 months to start seeing any movement at all in your search rankings. Google estimates the average time is about 5 months. So paid search really helps get visitors to your websites quickly, speeds up the process of optimizing your landing pages for higher conversions. It allows your mid-funnel to start paying in and get some return on your investment for that as well. So again, it's worth remembering, our combination of organic and paid is worth looking at. And Joelle will be talking about that later. I'm going to go actually for my first poll, and I would like to know whether your company uses organic or paid. And in which case, you know, organic only, or paid only? Do you use a combination? Are you thinking about it? So please get your mices. Click on the thing that replies most to you. So, you know, are you organic? Are you paid only? Interestingly enough, pretty well nobody is paid only. The vast majority of you are organic SEO only. It looks to me like there's a good quarter of you that is a combination of organic and paid. So really good. I'm glad to see all that. Well done. Okay. Closing that poll and moving right along. Thank you for clicking on your mice. Let's now talk about something what we call knowing your buyer persona and your international buyer persona. And why is this important? And why is it increasingly important from our point of view? I guess from our point of view, sitting where we sit in terms of the online space, we see that the web has changed the relationship between company and prospective buyer. It has made your prospective buyer, your buyer persona, your customer, your prospect at the center. It's given them increased power, as it were, and visibility. They can now talk customer to customer, customer to competitor. And your job, if you're in marketing, is to influence positively, in a positive direction, those little black arrows that go from customer to customer or customer to company. Whereas before it was much more a bilateral relationship. So I guess for us, the importance of knowing your buyer persona has increased because of the web and online marketing, and of how the buyer persona now looks for, engages with, and does business with companies. So what is a buyer persona? A buyer persona, and this is a classic definition of a buyer persona, is sort of a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer. It's based on markets research and real data about your existing customers. So you take your existing customers and you look at them and you say, what identifies them? How did we get there? What unifies our existing customers? It means if you identify your buyer persona, it means you can reach the right person at the right time, the right message. And when you think about who your buyer persona could be, there's lots of things that you can analyze about them in each case. And one of the best ways is just to get your whole sales team around the table and say, like, who's buying from us? Identify them. And that works really well. There's one of my colleagues pointed this out. It's a terrific example of a buyer persona with Zipcar. They even have it in their mission statement. So their buyer persona is urban, educated, tech savvy, and environmentally conscious. That is the buyer persona of a Zipcar. So that's the example of a buyer persona here for you. In terms of your international buyer persona, there's a couple of major questions you need to ask as international companies. You need to ask, is my international buyer persona different from my domestic buyer persona? If so, in what ways? And the next question you have to ask is, where are the big differences in each market? Are there multiple buyer personas across my markets? Which are the ones I'm targeting most? One of the major things is that very often for export companies, their in-market partners, like a distributor, is also or can be treated like a buyer persona. You want to attract distributors, then treat your distributor like a buyer persona and reach out to them in the same way as online marketing as you would to attract new leads. So again, for your international buyer persona, how are they finding you? How are they interacting with you? How are they engaging with you as a company? And in what ways is their buyer's journey different? This brings us really to our next section, which is all about your international buyer's persona. And there's kind of like there's good news on the internet on this, because these days, one thing's for sure, your buyer persona is online. 59% of the world is online. 4.5 billion people are online at the moment. And they're not just online occasionally. The average person spends 6 hours, more than 6 hours a day, 6 hours and 43 minutes per day online. So all of your leads, all of your buyer personas, your potential distributors, also your employees, your suppliers, everybody is online. And what are they doing online? Well, most of the time they're talking and communicating. So despite all the controversy around privacy, hacking, fake news, whatever it is, this is still growing strong, and we are still communicating, and we're still going online all the time. So as an exporter and as an international company, you can harness that and say, right, that is actually good news for me. If I can identify my buyer persona in my target international market, I know that I can get to them through a localized website and localized online marketing. It's a lot easier than it was before the internet. And you have to sort of like, get on a plane and look around. So here you go. The buyer's journey, as we define it, as typically, and many of you in marketing will recognize these kind of graphics. The buyer's journey is really about attracting, engaging, and then delighting your prospects. So you're going to turn strangers, they're going to be found and get found through your website and things, and then you will be understood internationally through your website, through your online marketing, and that means engaging with them. The more engagement you get, the better the trust that you need for that buyer's journey to translate into doing business with them. Once you have been found, been understood, do business, then you should definitely showcase successes and make sure that you are allowing your existing clients to be promoters of your business as well. So that, in a sense, is like part of the buyer's journey in a very sort of one slide example. Now, getting found and being understood actually is quite a long process and quite a complex process. But as I said earlier, it comes down to this localization, to being relevant at the local level. And being relevant at the local level obviously means having the right faultless translation. But it's lots of other things, as I mentioned earlier on that earlier slide, that you need in order to be relevant, in order to build trust. And that comes down back again to those localized websites and to the online marketing. Now I'm going to use my quick poll to launch a second, I'm going to launch a second poll. Do you already have localized websites for your export markets? Do you have localized websites? Do you use them for all of your export markets, for a few export markets? Are you thinking about them? I'm very, very pleased to see that many of you have some localized export websites for your export markets. So some of you have localized websites for your export markets. Very pleased indeed to see that, because without it, international marketing is really not very effective. You're really punching below the weight without it. So excellent. I'm going to close that, and some more of you just replying there, but I'm going to close that poll. So I wanted to give one example of how, besides language, localized marketing becomes important. So we talked about digital recognition. What does that mean? Digital recognition and domain authority. This is a horrible looking slide, way too much stuff on it. We really just wanted to show you an example of what a URL could look like for different people. If you're trying to get, let's say, Spanish-speaking people in Germany, then you need a particular type of URL, a top-level domain name, a country-specific top-level domain name with a ref lang for language, and so these are all different types of things which is a tool that, if you use correctly, will indicate to your target audience where that they are being recognized, and they will recognize from them. Now, just moving on in terms of social media. So we've talked a bit about sort of, the websites getting found. Now let's talk about engagement, social media. We mentioned earlier, social media now is so huge. 3.8 billion people are using social media networks across the world. And this, Facebook being the big one, but many local types of social media as well. I'm going to pass now the mic over to my colleague Alex, who's a real sort of expertise, and he can share his expertise on some of these major channels. I've asked him just to focus on the key ones that you probably already know, but would be good for you. Alex, would you like to join us?
Yes, thank you, Susanna. So we'll start with YouTube. So YouTube itself has over 1 billion users, which is, as Susanna mentioned earlier, a third of all the people that are on the internet, and viewers watch hundreds of millions of hours of YouTube videos and generate billions every day. Key statistics here, we can see the growth in viewing time on YouTube has accelerated year on year by 50% for the last 3 years, and the number of people watching YouTube each day has also increased by 40% year on year since 2014. What's interesting is as well that 80% of YouTube's views are from outside of the USA as well. The platform has launched local versions in more than 88 countries, which means that it's never been easier to create a local user experience and support users through their international buyer's journey. Just to put this in perspective, you can navigate YouTube in a total of 76 different languages, which covers 95% of the internet population. However, you do need to be cautious when you're reaching specific international buyer personas. Social media platforms do differ internationally, so make sure your social media, especially video, is localized to within your buyer's journey. For example, we have here is China, which has a very different environment when it comes to social media. So you may be aware that social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube are banned in China, meaning that you'll have to tailor your buyer's journey, your international buyer's journey through alternative social media platforms. So if you have buyer personas in China, you can target them using platforms like WeChat, which is the Chinese equivalent of Facebook, and the equivalent for video being Youku. So for Facebook, with over 2.5 billion monthly active users, Facebook is a hub for discovery, information, and interaction. It has an extension of many brands' websites and is a core component of their social strategy. With presence in most countries, Facebook is now available in over 100 languages. But as Susanna mentioned earlier, when talking about search engines, not all Facebooks are the same. Facebook is also localized, which means that you can reach your international buyer personas by offering them the best possible local user experience. So when you think about your social media strategy, always be mindful of who your buyer persona is and how they communicate. And as Susanna mentioned earlier, include what keywords they might be more familiar with. There's a vast audience pool and very sophisticated targeting options, which can be a very powerful tool for both B2C and B2B companies, as they are both looking to reach a targeted and engaged audience. Hootsuite reported that in Mexico, for example, over 50% of its subscribers use social media for business purposes as well. Finally, Facebook also allows to reach audiences across other platforms as well as engage with relevant groups, allowing you and your brand and message to gain exposure and gather great quality audience attention. In terms of Instagram, there's over 1 billion active users monthly and is now the second biggest social media platform worldwide. Only Facebook is bigger, but given the huge rise of Instagram in the past few years, then I'm sure this would change soon. As we mentioned before, finding the right platform to engage with your audience is key. So here you might be wondering if Instagram is the right social media platform for your business. The answer is yes. Instagram is a great choice for businesses, especially in today's world. You need to reach and interact with potential clients, and Instagram is the ideal platform to do that. Over 80% of all Instagram users are following at least one business account, and that's not all. Instagram has the highest engagement rate as well of all social media platforms, with 95 million posts and 4.2 billion likes per day. Instagram users themselves are very active as well, spending roughly 53 minutes a day on the app as well. Similarly to Facebook, Instagram offers different ways to communicate your message to the targeted audience you're trying to reach, aka your buyer persona. So the key in each case is that your buyer's journey is a local journey. Now I'll pass you back to Joelle, who will now talk about the international online strategy.
Alex, thank you so much. That was a fantastic whirlwind tour of some of the main things. And indeed, let's now turn to Joelle and talk about international online marketing strategies. Joelle.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Alex. That is a great starting point. And before just getting into a little bit more detail about what you need to consider and how to set up your international online marketing strategy. I just really want to go back and really look at what Susanna discussed in section 1 today. So really stress the importance, once again, of understanding, first of all, who your buyer persona are in each market, and really in each vertical your business might be operating within. So identify your buyer persona, make sure that you have their buyer's journey mapped. So what does it look like, but also how and where do they engage? What do they search for things? How are they looking to solve the problem? Because you'll need to be there at the right time with the right message. But also make sure that you know what your objectives are. So your long-term objectives that are aligned with your business main objectives and goals, but also your shorter-term objectives. So what do you want to achieve with that specific campaign you're looking to design and launch? And obviously thinking about this campaign, having it mapped. So what content are you going to use? Have you got any dates? Are you promoting an event? So is it time specific? Is it seasonal? What follow-up will this require? What metrics will you be looking to cover? So all of this will give you a great starting point to make sure that you have clear objectives, clear targeting, and clear timelines. On the next slide, I've got one more thing that you need to think about before you can get started designing and launching your international marketing campaign. Make sure you do your keyword research. It's been mentioned a couple of times today. I cannot stress enough how important this is across all of the different activities that you will be looking to do for your online marketing strategy. So this here is just a quick example of why doing and periodically reviewing your keyword research is key. So here is just an example of, for example, if you're looking to target a Brazilian audience, we'll be looking at Brazilian Portuguese, but we can see here an example of how the same word that we would use in English, so the word train in Portuguese, you can use trem or comboio. And really the main difference here is your audience in Brazil will be looking for the term trem, whereas your audience in Portugal, always using Portuguese, will be looking for the term comboio. So knowing where your buyer persona are and who they are and what they use to search would really allow you to really create a genuine local user experience. And this is vital for your SEO, but also for your search advertising, so your paid search. But this is also paramount for any content you create. And here with content, I also include social media posts. So that little snippet of text that you include most of the time is really all the audience has to make the decision, maybe even unconsciously, on whether they will engage with your content or not. So making sure that using native-like language really helps in building brand trust, as your content will feel local, relevant, genuine, creating that local user experience that will increase engagement, boost brand lift. And in this way, the users won't think about your post or your search results as a spam or as an ad. So just to give you an idea of how we can bring all of what we've discussed today, so objective, goals, persona, KPI, social media channel, how we can bring it all together. I just wanted to share a couple of case studies with you from our current clients. So the first one here is an example of a promotion we've created and delivered for Bowman products in the UK and German market. So in this case, one of the buyer persona and the one we're targeting here are art teachers. So here we had a very clear idea of who the buyer persona was, what the campaign objective we wanted to achieve were, what method. So by creating and promoting the blog to a top funnel audience on social media, we were then aiming and able to build pixel audience for this teacher persona that we were trying to reach. And this was done. So the method for us was drive top funnel traffic to the blog. So people, art teachers in this case, they might not have been familiar with the products just yet or with the brand just yet, but we engaged them with something that was timely for them on the lead up to the Easter holidays, trying to give them ideas and top tips for arts and crafts in the classroom. And we had a very clear follow-up in mind. So we wanted them to engage with our posts so we could then set up remarketing campaigns to promote relevant products to them through that pixel audience that we had built. So in this case, we had a very clear campaign set up, but we also knew what we wanted to achieve. So in this case, the performance metrics that we were looking at were page views and landing page and post engagement. The next example, once again, would give us an idea. Here we have a blog that we localized and promoting for our client in the UK and the Latin American market. And here again, we had a very clear picture of who the buyer persona was and what we were trying to achieve. So you can see we were trying to reach car enthusiasts. In this case, we had already engaged with our blog before. So in this case, the campaign objective was to raise brand awareness as a starter, but we also had an underlying objective, which was to generate engagement with the website and get people to click on relevant call to action and then take actions on our website. So in this case, our goal was to drive mid-funnel traffic to the blog, to the site, and the timing for us was whenever the blog was released, we'd be promoting it on social media to give it a boost and to launch it on the website. And the follow-up for us here was a remarketing again campaign for relevant products, but also to allow them to get in touch with their local distributors. So for this reason, the performance metrics we were looking at were once again post engagement, page views on the landing page, but we've also then starting to monitor the call to action clicks. So any call to action within the blog we'd monitor. And then as a secondary, and that's why I've put it in bracket here, tap to call, mail to outbound link to start understanding how the audience was reacting to the blog, how they were then engaging with the call to action, and this will then help us inform future strategies as well. So this is just a little bit of a of a summary, but I also wanted to share something that I always find interesting, because this example here is because we're talking about social media and engagement. Really, I want to share an example that I think is a fantastic way showcasing how the Port of Panama City, in this case, so it's something external to our clients and what we have been doing, have used social media to share news, in this case, share a piece of news, whilst linking the post to influencers to the right, using the right mention and the right hashtag. They really managed to boost their visibility, their post visibility, their account visibility. So when you're starting out, or really any time, I always recommend having a look at what others, and this could be influencers, stakeholders in your specific industry, and maybe even your competitors if you see they're getting good traction on social media. It's always a good idea to take inspiration from who's doing it right, who's getting the right engagement. And here you just have a few examples of how this can be done. Some good imagery, but also by linking to the right mention, linking to the right hashtags, gives your post more visibility, but also it shows that you're engaged with the right causes, that you're engaging with the right people. Again, building that trust with your brand. And social media is actually also a fantastic space to build relationships. So at the moment we're talking about, showed the example of how we have promoted content, how we've put the brand in front of our buyer persona. But social media is actually a great place to build relationship, and as we mentioned, trust with prospects, and why not even current customers. So if you're active on social media, make sure that you do engage with your followers. So you could invite them to like your page when they like a post that you've shared, but most importantly, answer their comments, answer their mentions. As we call social media listening, is a very, very powerful tool in engaging your followers and letting them closer to your brand and letting them know that you're there and you're engaging with them on social media and off social media. Perfect.
Joelle, before we
yeah.
talk about success, can I just interrupt you? And I want to launch my third poll just before we talk about analytics. We wanted to really ask how many of you are already using social media and online marketing to promote your exports. So it's particularly about your international business. So with regards to your international business, how many are you already doing this? Okay, some of you are already in your domestic market, some of you are thinking about it, some of you are in a few export markets. the vast majority of you, changing. Okay, the slight majority of you are involved already in online and social media and online marketing domestically and in a few export markets, and we're delighted to see that. There's some of you who are still thinking about it, but we're delighted to see that some of you are, that many of you, the majority, are domestic and in a few export markets. Thank you very much indeed. And now I'm going to get back to Joelle so she can talk about success.
Fantastic. Thank you, Susanna. Indeed. So success, but what is success, or how do we measure it? So one of the biggest mistake actually we see companies making is not measuring their success. But then if you want to measure your outcomes, then it really means that you have to define, as we mentioned, set objectives and think about what are realistic goals, especially if you're just starting out in a new market with a completely new strategy. It's important that you know what you're tracking and that your goals are realistic. Otherwise, it just leads to a disappointment and then you might not want to continue. So by starting little by little and making sure that you track, you choose your metric and you analyze them, that is the way to success. So for international markets, this can be especially important as we mentioned, you build up brand recognition and the trust that's so needed in the buyer's journey, as we've described it earlier on today. So I always think that before you can start designing your marketing strategy, you really need to think about your goals. This is really what then inform what metrics are important to you, and those are the ones you should really be focusing on. There are a number of KPIs or key performance indicators that you can track, and here we have listed a few. So you could concentrate on view count, clicks, awareness lift, ad recall, watch time if you're using video, completion rate, again if you're using videos or if you're using a form, comments if you're talking about social media, sales if you have an e-commerce website or if you want to pass it down to your salesperson. But as I mentioned, make sure that once you define your goal, those are realistic, and then you track the right metrics, you choose the right metrics to track against your goals. But most importantly, once it's set up, and I cannot stress this enough, don't forget to keep an eye on them. Analyze your results, and if needed, make changes, analyze them again, learn from what you've done, learn from what's happened, and continue doing that. So this is what we call optimization, and it's something that is an ongoing process and is possibly the most important process to make sure that your campaigns can not just track against your goal, but grow within it, and then you can have new goals and more ambitious goals as your business grows in the new market. And on the next slide, I've just again here a lot of content for one slide, but I just thought it was important to highlight that when designing your marketing strategy, it's important to always have a short-term and long-term goals. So always be aligned with the overall business strategy is important. And this will also give you really the starting point to decide what you want to achieve and consequently how you're going to monitor this, or what metrics should you focus on. In this case, I've taken social media as an example, as we talked about social media today. And here, for example, within a singular platform, let's say Facebook, for this specific example, you can already see how much you can tailor your activities to the goals and overall objectives of your business. So depending on what your business objective is, you have different goals within social media, within the platform that you can set up. And these are examples of the metrics that you'd then be monitoring and trying to keep a very close eye on. So just to conclude, obviously we cannot talk about success without talking about return on investment, and really having a clear idea of what your goals are, what metric you're going to track as we discussed, and what your KPIs will be. You'll have a much easier time tracking and demonstrating your ROI. So as all marketeers, I'm sure you're well too aware of, as I put in the little graphic here, sales revenue is always the most visible, or as we call it, top of the iceberg metric. But we know there is a lot going on underneath to build the scene and to drive initial conversions forward. So today we talked about social media and engagement, but alongside building brand awareness, lead generation is actually one of the most popular goals for a marketing campaign. So here I've just given another example that, for example, if you let's take an example of a lead generation campaign. By knowing your goal is, in case generating leads, in this case, the main KPIs that will determine your return on investment will most likely be how many leads are you generating to your website, but also how many marketing qualified leads can you then convert, and how many of those will turn into sales qualified leads, how many of those good conversation will then go towards your sales team, or towards who is responsible business development team to take this conversation forward. So here again, different goals, different KPIs, but everything is structured from the beginning. You'll have a much easier time when you're asked to demonstrate the return on investment of your marketing campaigns.
Joelle, fantastic. Thank you very much. We've packed a lot into this one webinar, so we've got a lot to think about and to give you to talk about international online marketing strategies. We thought we'd summarize a few of those slides just to make sure we have them there before the live Q&A. And I do see there's quite a few questions in the question box. We would continue adding them. If we don't get them all, we'll get to you later after the presentation. So we wanted to highlight this as a major slide, one of the key slides we had, basically knowing your international buyer persona and that buyer persona's journey. It's going to be online, that's clear. In today's world, it will be online. That journey, that buyer persona can be found online, engaged with online, and you can use online tools to drive your business, to get found, to be understood, to do business, and hopefully delight your clients with your products. So for us, the core element of being able to interact with your buyer persona, once you've discovered your buyer persona, identified them, is a localized website and international online marketing. And again, it's that whole discussion of the localization and the local user experience. And the other message that we wanted to come across on this webinar was that the websites and social media and the online marketing world are all localized. So it's the local user experience where you will be able to build the trust needed for the buyer's journey to actually turn into a lead, an opportunity, and a sales gained. Then just summarizing all of Joelle and Alex's input onto one little slide, we thought those are the 6 key messages that we wanted to really highlight to you all. 1, your localized website acts as a local springboard. Know your buyer persona, know their journey. Choose which platforms are worth your resources. This is what Alex was talking about, whether it's going to be a Facebook, whether is that relevant for China, yes or no. Set your goals, your online marketing and social media strategy, as Joelle gave some of those examples. Obviously, engage. Any engagement you see from clients and prospects, engage with them. Make sure that it's regular. It's not just a one-off. And then finally, look, analyze, and keep learning. It's that old adage of sort of, lather, rinse, repeat. Just look at it again and again. A website, once optimized, should be looked at continuously. Social media. There's a lot of resources to help on this journey for all of you, for international companies. You can find a lot on our website. There's lots of videos, ebooks, blogs. We also obviously pay tribute to Hootsuite. We are social, Wisol, Moz, Google, HubSpot, Marketo. There's really some major ones that you can get. We have a lot of infographics as well. That's a screenshot of an infographic about global social media for exporters that you can download from our website. So that brings us now down to questions. Thank you all very much for your questions. I'm going to zip through some of them, amalgamating some of the questions here as well. So the first question is actually going to be for Alex. Alex, this is actually two companies have actually asked the same question, or pretty well the same question, which is that they're both B2B. So in what way is Instagram relevant for B2B companies? Should they use Instagram? Is it relevant for them? Alex?
Yes, well, definitely yes. It doesn't really matter if you're selling B2B or B2C. You'll find both on Instagram private users, as well as other businesses as well. Only the way you interact and post on Instagram depends on your strategy and goals with that platform as well. So as a starting point, if you want to reach other businesses, you might be more specific on your products or services, creating more professional content and promoting blogs, case studies, or infographics, which might be relevant for them. If you want to create awareness for the end customer, you might want to go into a more emotional level, which will be in a more visual way.
Fantastic, thanks. Sharp and to the point. Right, Joelle, you're next. About buyer personas, and again, I'm amalgamating a couple of different questions here. The first question I have is about multiple buyer personas. What do you do? Can you have multiple buyer personas? What do you do if you've got multiple buyer personas in one market or across markets? Joelle, any tips on that?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, and you're absolutely correct. In fact, you can, and most probably really will have more than one buyer persona, especially across multiple markets. As we said, each market will have their own specific buyer persona. So how many you need? Well, in reality, there is no really definite answer here, and really depends on the size and scope of your business, and even what markets are you looking to export into. But I think it's generally recognized. I think HubSpot suggests that you can start off focusing on 2 or 3 personas and then grow your segmentation to as many as you need with time and as you learn more about them. One thing that's always important to remember, and I would say be careful with, is that you don't really want to have too many overlapping characteristics across your different personas. Otherwise, you're duplicating your work and not really achieving the results you want. So we'd recommend probably sticking to 3 to 8 maximum different buyer personas within one market.
Thank you, Joelle. Still sounds like a lot of buyer personas in the market. It's scary now. A question, I think it's from Gina. Who's responsible for identifying a buyer persona? I'm happy to answer this one because, in fact, there is no golden rule on this. It doesn't have to be one person or the other. But from experience, what we have found works best is to involve a spectrum of people, but the people in your company who are closest to the clients that you have and closest to the vision. So the head of sales, the head of the marketing, your business development manager. And really what works really well is to get a dynamic discussion between them. And then you start just, one person taking notes on a whiteboard, and you will have defined your buyer persona by the end of the meeting. And you can say, okay, that is the kind of person we get who buys our products in that market, and that's the type of product, person for that kind of product, and that's the kind of buyer persona for that one. But the answers are all within your company already. That's, I think, the most important one. It's not something that you've got to go out of your comfort zone or out of your company to identify. A buyer persona is something that if you're a successful company, give a profile of who buys your products in your market, and really that's a combination, as I said, of business development and sales and people who are close to the coalface, everyone. There's a lot of other questions. One question I have, which I think is interesting and which I will answer, is from, I think it's Jody. How do you sync your website translations if you're continually tweaking content? In other words, if you're tweaking content in your domestic website, how do you make sure everything's up to speed? And this is something where we have, as a company, this is because we manage corporate websites, we manage all these different international websites a company can have. Yes, that's one of the things that project management tools helps a lot, I can tell you. So we have project management tools that allow you to see what needs to be done when. Without it, you're really struggling to make sure you're all on top of things at the same time. Not all content needs to be translated for all websites. It's not always relevant. That's, you really have to choose what is the right for each website each time. So it is a question of case by case per content, but yes, it is necessary to manage each website on a continuous basis, and that is a very full-time job. As I said right in the beginning, a good website is a website that is not parked in the garage. It's out there driving the roads, as it were. You need to get your website, animate it, use it, create blog, create content, look at it, get the keywords up, analyze the websites, etc. So yes, tweaking content and then managing it on international websites is a full-time job. We have a lot of other questions, but where my time is up, I said it would be under an hour. We will reply to your questions individually by email. In the meantime, please stay on and please fill out our surveys. We would really appreciate it if you could. Otherwise, it leaves to me to say a big thank you to Joelle and Alex for all their hard work, and to all our companies out there. Happy exporting, go global. You can do it. We're happy to help. Get in touch if you need us. Thank you for attending, and fill out our questionnaire. Bye-bye.